Not all weapons are forged in fire. Some lie hidden, for centuries, in the quiet of earth, until a nation dares to dig them up. In the town of Bougouni, nestled deep in southern Mali, such a weapon has been found. Not a missile. Not a tank. But a rock, white, light, and deadly in the right hands. They call it lithium. But in Mali today, it has another name, white gold. This is not just about mining. This is not just about minerals. This is a war. A silent one. Fought without blood, but not without cost. Because whoever controls lithium, controls batteries. Whoever controls batteries, controls cars, phones, drones, even the pace of the modern world. And now, under the steady hand of President Assimi Goïta, Mali has entered the game. But not as a pawn. This is the white gold gambit. And Mali just made its move. If you believe Africa must control its own resources, don't just watch, comment your thoughts below. And be part of the voice rising across the Sahel. Just days ago, Mali's Minister of Mines stood beneath the southern sky of Bougouni. Beside him, the governor. And behind them, the mountain of white. With the installations complete and production tests finalized, the second lithium mine in Mali is now ready. Official. As the cameras rolled, they declared, nothing stands in the way of production. The state is ready. The mine is ready. In the coming days, President Assimi Goïta himself will inaugurate the site, marking a new chapter not just in mining, but in national sovereignty. From this quiet red earth, a challenge is rising. Not in words, but in tons. They didn't think anyone would look here. Not this far south. Not in Bougouni. For decades, Mali's wealth was hidden beneath red dust and silence. Gold, phosphate, uranium. But those were yesterday's prizes. Today's empire doesn't run on gold. It runs on lithium. And Bougouni has it. Not a little. Not a trace. But a seam so wide. So pure, it made even satellites stop and stare. They said it would take foreign money. Western machines. Generous partnerships. But Mali remembered. Because this isn't the first time white gold came to its soil. In 2023, a British company, Total Minerals, unveiled Mali's first lithium project near Bougouni. The world applauded. China invested. Contracts were signed. But Mali took notes. They saw how 51% of the value chain still left Africa. How mining could mean extraction, not empowerment. And how development can wear a foreign flag. So when Total Mining, this time with 35% owned by the Malian state, stepped into open Bougouni's lithium veins. It wasn't just business. It was a recalibration of power. Here, in a commune forgotten by maps, Mali chose a different route. Not aid. Not dependency. But design. Inside the plant. Crushers pound stone into dust. Outside, men in overalls, Malian, not imported, load carts with purpose. And above it all, the voice of President Assimi Goïta echoes silently. We don't sell our future. We build it. This is the mine they never wanted you to see, not because it is secret, but because it is sovereign. When European envoys landed in Bamako last year, lithium wasn't on the press release. But behind closed doors, it was everything. They had questions. Would Mali allow exports? Would it honor the old contracts? Would it lease the veins? Or own them? And Mali answered, not in press statements, but in infrastructure. A $67 million facility, operational by 2025. A production capacity of 200,000 tons. And a roadmap that stretches not to Brussels or Beijing, but deep into the Sahel. Because the Real Revolution isn't what Mali digs. It's what Mali refuses to export, control. In Bougouni, they speak differently now. School children learn words like supply chain. Farmers talk about electricity. Young men train not just to mine, but to manage, to maintain, to multiply. This is not just a factory. It's a statement. That Africa is no longer content to be the quarry. It wants to be the architect. And while drones fly overhead to map Mali's veins, something deeper is happening underground. A shift. A realignment. A war, fought not with armies, but with ownership. Because this white gold, it's not for sale. Not all of it. Not anymore. If you believe what's buried in Africa should build Africa, leave your voice in the comments. Let the world know, sovereignty starts from the soil. The rocks of Africa remember. Even when borders change and flags fall, the earth does not forget. For centuries, they came for its soil, glittering, pulsing, bleeding. From gold in Ghana to copper in Congo, from uranium in Niger to diamonds in Sierra Leone, the story was always the same. Dig. Ship. Profit. Leave. They called it development. They called it progress. But what they left behind were empty hills, broken spines, and silence. In the archives of France, there are maps. Not of cities, but of veins. Veins of gold. Veins of iron. Veins of life. That's what the colonies were built on, not civilization, but extraction. Mali knows this well. Once the empire of Mansa Musa, whose wealth shook the world, Mali became a cautionary tale of how riches can become chains. In 1892, when the French established the colony of French Sudan, they brought roads not to connect villages, but to move ore. They brought rail not for citizens, but for cargo. And they brought schools not to teach liberty, but to teach obedience. Lithium is just the latest chapter. Only this time, the players changed. The uniforms changed. But the game remained the same. In 2009, a UN report called it the resource paradox. Countries richest in minerals were often the poorest in everything else, because control had always been external. A mine was never just a mine. It was a license to loot, written in contracts too long for locals to read. This is what makes Bougouni different. Because while the world watches the lithium market like hawks, Mali is doing something rare. It is rewriting the script. No longer is extraction the end goal. Now, it is transformation. Transformation of wealth into roads, not rails that flee, but highways that connect. Transformation of dust into schools, not for obedience, but for innovation. Transformation of power, not into exports, but into sovereignty. But it is not easy. Old hands do not open easily. And those who once owned the maps are watching. Take the example of uranium in Niger. For years, France lit up Paris with Niger's uranium while Nigerian villages sat in darkness. Areva took the ore. The people got radiation. Today, when Mali drills lithium, it knows better. Because history is not just a book. It is a warning label. The so-called resource curse is not a curse. It is a strategy. A strategy that kept Africa digging for others, never for itself. That's why Mali's share in the Bougouni mine, 35%, is not just a number. It is a message. That ownership is no longer optional. That partnership must now mean parity. That Mali will no longer sell its tomorrow for today's approval. When Western investors ask for stability, what they often mean is predictable compliance. But stability is not silence. And sovereignty is not a suggestion. Bougouni is not a perfect model. Coal mining still owns 65%. The global market still dictates price. But for once, Mali set the terms. Not just the timeline. Not just the tonnage. But the tone. That matters. Because before any nation can rise, it must first remember what made it kneel. For Africa, that was gold. Then diamonds. Then coltan. Now lithium. And if the pattern is not broken, then the curse will repeat, with newer flags, newer logos, but the same results. But if Bougouni holds, if Mali resists, if Assimi Goïta turns the seam of stone into a spine of steel, then maybe, just maybe, this time is different. Maybe white gold will not be what's extracted, but what's awakened. There is a moment when a resource stops being a commodity and becomes something else entirely. For decades, Africa's wealth was measured in exports, tons of copper, barrels of oil, carats of diamonds. The richer the ground, the poorer the people. A silent algorithm of exploitation. But lithium is not just another resource. It is the core of the 21st century. And in Mali, it is becoming something else, a curriculum. At the Polytechnic of Bamako, professors now teach battery chemistry in classrooms once built for basic physics. In Koulikoro, young engineers study data from Bougouni's core samples. In Sikasso, vocational schools are launching programs on mineral logistics, trade law, and sovereign finance. Because for Mali, the white gold rush is not a sprint, it is a syllabus. A blueprint. A vision. President Goïta calls it La Refondation Technologique. A national rebuild, layered in stone, wired in lithium, and driven by people. This is not just rhetoric. The government has pledged to reinvest a portion of all lithium revenue into local training and research. Bougouni is not just a mine, it is a pilot site for a national model. And models matter. Because for too long, Africa was the model others tested. Failed states. Fragile zones. Extraction economies. But now, Mali is flipping the page. When Goïta toured the Bougouni site earlier this year, he was not flanked by consultants or CEOs. He walked with local governors, educators, and technicians. He asked not just about volume, but about ownership. Not just about extraction, but transformation. And the answers are beginning to form. In the first 6 months of operation, Cotal Mining and the Malian state created over 500 direct jobs. More than half are filled by young, locally trained engineers. The quarry no longer speaks only French or Mandarin, it speaks Bambara. But language is not enough. What matters is control. What matters is that Mali now negotiates from a position of leverage. Not desperation. Because lithium is power. Literally. Every phone, every car, every satellite, every drone, they all begin in the ground. And the countries that hold that ground, they hold the switch. That's why the white gold Gambit matters. It's not just about Mali. It's about the map. In Burkina Faso, under Captain Traoré, new geological surveys are mapping untapped reserves. In Niger, even amid political tremors, local councils are pushing for renegotiated mining contracts. And across the AES alliance, a new doctrine is taking root. We do not export weakness. We export value. The West is watching. Not because it fears the stone, but because it fears the independence. Because what Mali is doing in Bougouni is dangerous. Not militarily. Not economically. But ideologically. It suggests that Africa can rise, not as a client, but as a counterbalance. That development can be homegrown. That sovereignty is not a speech, it is a system. And that power, real power, does not beg for validation. So yes, Bougouni may still ship ore. Yes, Cotal still holds majority stake. Yes, the IMF still circles. But there is a shift. A new language. A new rhythm. One that says, we don't extract. We design. We don't wait. We build. We don't ask. We act. This is the sound of Africa rising, not as an echo, but as a voice. If you believe the future should be written in African ink, hit like. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Because this is no longer just Mali's fight. It is ours. But here is the truth no one wants to say out loud. Owning the mine is not owning the power. Lithium does not end in Bougouni. It begins there. After the stone is pulled from the earth, it goes to ports. From ports to processing plants. From there to battery factories, in China, Germany, the US. And then it comes back. In the form of phones Mali does not manufacture. Cars Mali cannot yet build. Drones Mali cannot yet control. This is the real white gold trap. They let you keep the quarry, so long as they keep the chemistry. Because in today's world, raw materials are not wealth. Refined knowledge is. And that refinement still lies elsewhere. Cotal Mining, though 35% state-owned, is still 65% private. And who owns Cotal? Investors. Funds. Invisible networks with addresses in London, Beijing, and Luxembourg. So while Mali drills deeper into its land, others drill deeper into the value chain. It's a sleight of hand that has fooled generations. Let the locals cut the stone. Let the foreigners cut the profit. This is not pessimism. It is pattern. Look at the Congo. They mine cobalt, 2/3 of the world's supply. But 90% of that cobalt is refined in China. Look at Guinea. They ship bauxite, but cannot refine aluminum. Look at Niger. They mine uranium. But Paris still dictates the light switch. Mali now stands at a crossroads. It has stepped out of the shadows. But can it walk into the light? Because if it stops at extraction, if it celebrates too soon, if it accepts partial control as full victory, then the white gold gambit will become just another footnote. A gleaming mine. A proud headline. And an empty table when the real deal is made. But if Mali pushes further, builds its own refineries, trains its own metallurgists, designs its own batteries, then, and only then, will the curse be broken. Not by what is mined, but by what is made. Because sovereignty is not just the right to dig. It is the power to define the future. If you want Africa to own not just the soil, but the science, share this message. Because the chain must be broken, not just split. In Bougouni, the machines keep humming. The ground keeps giving. And the people keep learning. This is not the end of the story. It is the first chapter written by Malian hands. The world will still try to bargain. It will still send envoys, emissaries, algorithms. It will try to measure Mali by metrics it does not understand. But something deeper has been unearthed. Not just lithium, but a will. A will to define value. To build the chain. To rise on our own terms. Bougouni is not just a mine. It is a mirror of what Africa has, and what Africa must become. So let the world watch. Let it doubt. Let it whisper. Because from this white gold, a new fire has been lit. We do not wait. We do not beg. We mine. We rise. The mine is open. The drills are running. But the real war is only beginning. Lithium, for all its shine, is not the prize. It is the gateway. Whoever controls lithium today, controls storage tomorrow. And storage isn't just about keeping the lights on. It's about running the next internet. Launching the next satellite. Powering the next army. The West knows this. So does China. And now, so does Mali. Because Bougouni's lithium will not only charge phones. It will power servers, surveillance grids, drone fleets, artificial intelligence hubs. And in a world where borders are becoming digital, controlling storage is like holding the keys to a digital kingdom. This is what makes AES more than a military alliance. It is now a mineral shield. Burkina Faso. Niger. Mali. 3 nations, once seen as vulnerable, now rising as guardians of the Earth's most strategic veins. That is why recent military deployments around Bougouni were not just about protection. They were a message. To mercenaries. To proxies. To pirates in suits. You will not loot this land again. President Goïta, along with Captain Traoré and General Tchiani, are not just defending territory. They are defending time. They are buying time for Mali to build its future before someone else decides it for them. And time, in the lithium world, is everything. The global race is heating up. Chile is running out of fresh water. Australia's mines are tied to Chinese buyers. And the US. It's watching Africa more closely than ever. So what does that mean for Mali? It means pressure. Pressure to privatize. Pressure to lease faster. Pressure to trade control for cash. And wrapped in this pressure are promises of aid. Loans, security, partnerships. But Mali has learned. So has the Sahel. They understand that sovereignty bought with debt is not sovereignty, it is submission with paperwork. That is why Bougouni must not be just a mining site. It must be a strategic reserve. A place where extraction meets protection. Already, whispers are growing. Tech giants want in. Battery companies want long-term rights. Logistics firms are drafting support proposals. But what Mali must ask is not, how fast can we sell? It is, how long can we hold? Hold until refineries are built. Hold until engineers graduate. Hold until batteries made in Mali power grids, not just gadgets. This is the long game. And it will be lonely. Because real independence doesn't get applause. It gets sanctioned. It gets sabotaged. It gets whispered about in think tanks and corridors of embassies. But that is why it matters. Because if Mali holds, others will follow. Ghana. Chad. DR Congo. Even resource-rich giants like Angola and South Africa will reimagine the deal. And when that happens, it's not just the lithium market that shifts. It's the entire blueprint of how power flows in the 21st century. Because in the end, this is not about rocks. It's about rules. Who writes them? Who enforces them? And who finally says, enough? So as the world circles Bougouni like vultures, let it circle. Let it speculate. Let it underestimate. Because Mali is not just digging stone. It's digging memory. Digging dignity. Digging destiny. If you believe Africa should not just rise, but remain standing, share this story. Not just to be heard, but to be remembered. Because Bougouni may be a mine, but history will remember it as a message.